Welcome to this introduction to TMT, a test management tool developed and maintained by Red Hat. This is a Python project that you can install via pip, that way. And it provides an abstraction layer around your test cases. So just using a configuration file in a kind of YAML format, you can describe your test cases and you can be able to run those test cases against different systems under test or different test environment. That can be a container, a virtual machine, a physical hardware, whatever. So TMT, so let me show to you which version I have. Actually, I have version 1.42. I already have it installed on my Fedora virtual machine just for this presentation. The configuration file are written in a YAML-like format that is named FMF. That is the acronym of Flexible Metadata Format. Flexible because you can combine together multiple configuration files leveraging inheritance that is based on the folder structure. So essentially, if you have nested folders, the nested folder will inherit all the configuration of the parent folders. And it's not only that, but you can also adjust the configuration based on different criteria inside your FMF files. Let's start. TMT need to know what is the root folder of your project. So more or less like Git is doing. So Git, when you start a Git repository, you init a Git repository that is creating some folder to let Git able to understand what is the root folder. The same way we need to do with TMT. So let me show to you that in my current folder, I don't have any hidden folder. No, I don't have any folder and either no hidden folder. So let's start to init the repository. You can do just calling tmt init, but I want to also use tmt to create some dummy file, some example file to just understand and navigate to those files to understand how it works. So I can use tmt init -t that stands for template full. That way, TMT will init the repository and will also create some file. You will see that the repository has been initialized in this folder, creating this .fmf folder, and is applying the template full, so it's creating some additional folder. Let me show to you. We can see that we actually have this folder, and we have now a plan, a story, and one test. Let's try to open this test file, this main FMF file, just to see how it looks like. Is a really simple YAML configuration file that comes with two parameters: summary, that is a description, and test, that is the entry point essentially of our test. Okay, that is a bash script. So let's see. The bash script is just creating some temporary folder, is calling tmt help, writing to this temporary file. It's writing the help, the content of the help into the temporary file, and is doing some grep inside this file to see if it exists, and then is removing the file. No, just a bash script that is checking tmt essentially is installed on the machine. Just do that. So let's see what we can do with the tmt. We can use tmt to list with ls command all the tests that we have. So and those names are important because tmt will know the test cases using that name. The same way we can do with the plans. So we see that we have one plan. Let's see how the plan looks like. Essentially, the plan comes with some section. The most important one is the discover, but that allow the plan to find all the tests that you want to run. So with this test, we are discovering from a remote repository that is the TMT repository, using FMF as way to discover test cases. We are preparing the environment using an Ansible file that is available in the repository at this relative path, and we are executing a test using TMT. That's the content of the plan file. To run a test cases using TMT, you need a plan that is able to discover your test. So we said that we have, using the TMT Init template full, we created an example plan. Let's see how this plan looks like again. It is able to discover test cases using FMF from a remote repository. So this plan is not able to discover this local file, this local test. So we need another plan that is able to discover our test. Let's copy the plan example to plan dummy file. Okay, and let me edit the plan dummy file. I want to change essentially the discover criteria using test, where I can list test cases, and I can do via string match. So all the tests that will have this string in the name will be executed. Can be a single test, all the tests. Essentially, you can run all the tests from within a folders, or you can also use other criteria like tags. You can have tag in your test cases, and you can filter test cases using tags. Then I want to remove this preparation because I don't want to run this Ansible playbook, also because I don't have it locally. And I want to use TMT as execute way. Okay, let me save it. I can also check if my configuration file is correct using tmt lint command, but it's not now. I don't want to run it now. So let's try to run the test. To run the test, you need to use tmt run command. You can add options like verbosity with different levels, and tmt has different steps, and you have to specify which step you want to execute. The steps are the discover, the preparation, where you can run some preparation scripts, or you can install packages, stuff like that. Then you have the execution, the report step, and the finish step, and the report step. Okay, so let's say that we want to run all the possible steps using the -a options, and then I want to specify where I want to run it. So I want to add some additional configuration for the provision step. I want to say that I want to run it locally using how local. To be able to do that, I need to enforce also a feeling safe option, because test execution can affect your system, can make your system unstable or to destroy it at all. So if you need to be sure that the test that you want to run on a local system is possible to be executed, I mean. And I want to specify, for example, from all the tests that a plan can discover, I can also implement some filtering like test with name test example. Okay, or I can just specify which plan I want to run using plan name dummy. Let's try to do plan name dummy, plan name dummy. Let's see. You see that TMT is starting to run, and the idea of this test run is the run-005, and all the artifacts and the file will be saved in this folder that can be also changed by the user. So let's see, I am executing the plan with name dummy that has is started the discovery phase, where is able to discover one test that is a test example because it's using the criteria test. Then is provisioning the system, that is my local system, so distribution is Fedora Linux 37, the package manager is DNF, I'm using Linux and I'm a super user. And that's the kernel version I'm using. Then the system is running the prepare step, where essentially is running some default command from TMT, but no additional step that I requested, and then is running the execute, that is the content of my test, that is essentially described by an FMF file that says that my entry point is test.sh file. So I'm running a bash script, but the same way I can run a Python script, I can run a Perl script, I can run any kind of test written in any language. And so you see the execution has been logged because I have this kind of verbosity, and then also I executed the report step where I'm generating some report like an output.txt file. We can also generate different kind of reports, so like HTML reports. And then there is the finish step where I'm not asking to execute anything. So for example, in this phase, you can move artifacts to different folders, you can clean your system, you can do whatever thing you see. And at the end, you see that I executed one test and the test I executed passed. So far, we saw that we can run a test case written in any kind of language using TMT, but that to do that we need a TMT plan that is able to discover our test case. So let's see how we can use TMT from within BASIL. First of all, let me say that BASIL comes with a default general purpose plan that is available under API test plan. The idea is that we can discover test using environment variable, and BASIL is sharing a set of environment variable during the test execution to populate the discover step based on the test case that you defined within BASIL. So we share several environment variables like the test case ID, the relative path, the test case name, the user email, stuff like that, that you can reuse for any purpose in your test execution, like to generate reports or to trigger other part of your infrastructure. So this is the plan. BASIL comes also with some example TMT test cases that you can see in example TMT. There are multiple folders, so we can have some local file that you can run on your machine that are not destructive tests. There is a dummy passing test and a dummy failing test that is just exiting with some number different from 0. And for example, there are an example to run a syscall test from LTP project, Linux test project, and an example to run test from glibc upstream test suite. So let's see how we can configure test cases in BASIL. So we need to open a software component. I created a dummy software component under TMT, TMT example API. I'm using BASIL README as a reference document, but you can use some meaningful document. I can select a section of this reference document. I can assign to it a test case. So I can create my new test case. This is an example test case. This is the description of my test case. Let me use like some markdown. And then you have to specify just two information that are the most important one: the repository and the relative path in your repository, that are the way the the general purpose TMT plan that we use in BASIL is able to discover your test. Later on, during the test execution, in your test execution configuration file, you can specify, for example, different branch. So you can use also different branch from the repository. Let's use, for example, BASIL Git repository. We can use the examples TMT local dummy test from the BASIL repository, and we can assign a unique coverage that is a percentage of completeness to specify if this test case is enabled is able its own to complete describe the reference document. So let's try to put here 50% just to say this test case is not enough itself, not to cover the reference document. So we need to create some additional test cases. So actually you don't see nothing here because we are in the software requirement mapping view. So to see it, you need a software requirement and you need to map the test cases under the software requirement. So we need to move to the test case mapping view. So in the test case mapping view, that can be also the default view of your software component. Just add it here in the default view. You can select test case. Let me do that. So opening it, we will be under the test case mapping view and we will see test cases. That in the case we are focusing on test cases, for example, in a project for the one we don't need software requirements. No? So you see, we are at version of this test case 1.1. Anytime that you change any information of the test cases, the first number will change. Anytime that you change information on the mapping, so the section, the offset, the coverage, will affect the second number of the version. And you can navigate the history of your test cases. So anytime anything changes, you can understand who and when that changed. You can also manage status of your test case. It can be in progress, in review, can be approved, or stuff like that. And you can also add comments and have some conversation with your colleagues. For our interest now is to execute this test case to see how it will look like. So let's try to run it. To run it, we need a test run title, let's say TMT001, and then we need a test run configuration, because we can have, you can use different plugin. We can run it on testing farm, we can run on GitHub Action, on GitLab CI, or any other plugin that you can also create by your own. Let's use TMT as our default. We can also change the branch. Let's use the default now, and then we can also change the provision type. So we can have container or SSH. So essentially we can run it in a container in the machine that is running BASIL, and it will be a Fedora container if BASIL is running on a Fedora machine, or can be a Debian container if it's running on a Debian, like in this case that I'm running on a Raspberry Pi. Or you can specify SSH and you can reuse your SSH keys defined in your BASIL profile, and that can be a virtual machine or a physical hardware, whatever you want. Let's use container. Then you can specify environment variables. For example, you can specify value var1 is equal to value1, and you can separate using semicolon, and then you can specify all the other variables. There is one particular variable that is interesting, that is delay, that can help you to apply delay and to postpone the execution in minutes. So for example, delay 5 will start the execution in 5 minutes. That is useful because sometimes you want to run test cases during the weekend and you can trigger it on Friday, and say you can put a delay to start the test execution on Saturday morning, stuff like that. Let's just add one environment variable, and then we can run the test. Sorry, test run configuration is mandatory, so this is my TMT example configuration. Why you need a title? Because you can reuse later on existing configuration, so we can have this configuration saved as a default, and then we can reuse it all the time, no, without filing it anytime that I need to run a test. So let's try to run this test now. You see an entry has been created into the test result, and with the TMT name I used, and the date, and I can navigate also the details. So there is a unique ID provided by TMT, and then I can also navigate the log. It will take some time to run it. Let's see, now the status you see changed. Before we saw it was created, now it is running. Okay. Let's see how things go in few seconds. In the meantime that we waited this execution, I want to show you that to run this test again, you can just click this button, and it will use the same configuration, the same parameters. Just will create a copy of the request, and it will start it immediately. Okay, so let's go to the details now. To this test cases, you see that this is the TMT log, where you can navigate the execution, and you can check now what is doing, because as default is using the largest verbosity possible. So let's go to the end. Is still running, is installing now the is performing now the probably the preparation. Let's open the test result after a few seconds. So you see the test has been executed and passed. So you can navigate the logs through the end to see the results. So essentially, the summary we saw before from the terminal, total one test passed, and you can also navigate artifacts, because the default is that we use TMT, the artifacts folder defined by TMT from the TMT plan data environment variable, and if you move files to that folder, those files will be accessible from the user interface. So you can see that we also have example of HTML reports that we can navigate, and other files generated by the test execution. So we can also navigate artifacts. From here you can also link external bugs or fixes, and edit and add your notes to each test execution. Let's see now some other details, because now we use the remote FMF file from the BASIL repository, but can be in any repository. So you can have your test repository to use, but you can also leverage BASIL test BASIL tool. So you can have in the user file section, you can also upload your FMF files. So for example, here I have my TMT file that is essentially the copy of the test logic that we saw in the template generated by TMT. The difference is that that template executed an external bash script. This one has the test definition inside the test, essentially the logic of the test, the bash logic of the test inside the test statement. Okay, so let's see if we can reuse a file, how we can reuse a file that we specify inside the user files. So if we open the software component, we can assign, just as an example, you see now the coverage is 50%, you can assign to this section another test case, that is like from local files, test from local files. So you see that here, instead of repository, we can click from user files. So we can just select one of the files from the list. The one that we want is test01.fmf1 that we saw before, and we can assign 50%. So now you see the coverage of the section is 100% because we added another test case that fill 50% of the completeness. Now let's use completeness as a terminology. So now we have this test from local file. We can go here and use run test run test 001 run 001, just something like that, and then you can edit your configuration, or you can just reuse the configuration we selected before. So you see this configuration is existing, is informing you, but if you change anything here, like the environment variable, you see this configuration is new. So that will mean that we are going to create a new configuration, because it's really different from the one that we used before. So I want to use this one, so I want to use the existing one. Let's now use this configuration file to run this test. So the same way, now we are executing a test using a local file from the files that we have inside BASIL instance, and it will be essentially the same. Let me now log in as the admin of this BASIL instance. Just log in, admin. Okay, now I'm logged in as the admin. I want to show to you that the admin of a BASIL instance can modify a file that is named test run plugin preset configuration file. That is a YAML file where you can specify some default configuration, some default test run configuration that people can just reuse in your environment. Those configuration can apply to each test run plugin, so can apply to GitLab CI, to GitHub Action, to testing farm, and you can specify for different software component different kind of preset configuration. So let's try to define one for TMT. For example, I want to use a name like local xxx, and then I want to use main as branch, and you can select the provision type. For example, you can specify like a remote machine, specify the IP address of a machine using a provision type connect, and then you can specify the username or the SSH key that you can use to connect to the machine, so people don't need to worry about the setup. And then you can also specify some context variable and environment variables. Context variable are variables that you can use inside your plan or test cases to change the behavior of the test based on the value of some variable. So imagine that you have like condition 1 value 1, so if condition 1 is equal to that, you can like do some additional steps, or you can skip some steps, stuff like that. Okay, so and so you can create some a file like this. So let's see what it will look like. Let me save it. Okay, so let me log in again as a normal user, and that I created this software component. Okay, so I want to use the preset configuration file to run this test. So I can set here test run preset 1, and then I can say I want to use TMT plugin and I want to use this preset configuration local xxx that I showed before, and I can apply on top of that other configuration. I can also extend this configuration using other additional environment variables, or I can overwrite the branch with the one that I need, so I can use all the information from this one, but I can override the branch, for example. So let's run it. Sorry, I need this title. local xxx preset default. So I know that is the default. Now I don't have any changes to this one. Otherwise I can say local xx branch x, for example. So and now I created a new test run using a preset configuration file, and then in few minutes I will see the test results.